Hi, everyone. Welcome to Power to Fly's Chat and Learn. We are so excited to have you join us today. We have an exciting guest that is going to be talking about relaunchers into the organizations, and we have a lot of questions, so we're so excited to get into it. Some housekeeping items for today. So we would love you to participate. So turn your cameras on. You can show up on the live recording, and if you want to come off mute and go ahead and take your microphone on that off mute and ask your question. This is being recorded, and we'll send an email with the link later right in the chat. So you can message me privately, or you can put it in the general chat, and our folks on the producing end will send it over to me and I can ask your question. And then just keep up with us on social, right? So follow us at Power to Fly, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're so excited to have you. Thank you. So our guest speaker today is Carol Fishman Cohen. So Carol Fishman Cohen, she's a pioneering career re-entry expert and the CEO and co-founder of iRelaunch. iRelaunch works with employers worldwide to build and expand career re-entry programs to hire professionals returning to work after extended leave. iRelaunch identifies talent for and trains hundreds of managers, recruiters, and relaunchers to participate in these programs. Thank you so much for joining us today, Carol.
Hi, Angela. I'm so happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to do some quick takeaways for today. So we've got 3: the benefits of career reentry programs, the key steps in launching a career reentry program at your organization, and then additional resources highlighting career reentry program best practices. So let's kick it off with some questions. Are you ready, Carol?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, so could you tell us why is it advantageous for employers to have their own career reentry program?
Well, first of all, the idea of having a career reentry program and owning it end to end inside your company is similar to why you might make that same decision for your university student internship program. You want to have control over when it's offered, what time of year, how long it is, how frequently it runs, what the criterion are for people who are applying and accepted into the program. And you want to have control over the programming and features of the program so they're consistent with the culture and approach and philosophy of your own company. So much better to customize than to rely on a cookie cutter or standardized type of framework.
Awesome, thank you. And could you give us really a quick insight into who these are specifically built for? So I know you've put out so much content on relaunchers. We know, as we look at bringing women into the workforce, that's a huge aspect. But who are some other identities that you look for these internship programs?
Right. Thanks, Angel. I'm thinking about, we look at relaunching very broadly at iRelaunch. We are focused on women and men who take career breaks for childcare or elder care reasons, and then also reasons that have nothing to do with caregiving. It could be someone's own illness that they've recovered from, people who are unretiring after retirement. Maybe you're a trailing spouse or partner with a spouse or partner who had an overseas assignment. It could be a situation where you're a military spouse, or you've actually had done military service yourself and then taken a career break after that. So really a broad range of reasons why people take the career breaks. But the important common factor is that the career breaks are typically not related to people's work performance. They're usually related to an external factor. And that's one of the reasons that this is a hidden pool that's very quickly being discovered by more and more employers, because it tends to be very high caliber in terms of education and experience. And we can talk about some of the other attributes of relaunchers later if you want.
I love that. Practicing inclusivity is at the heart of Power to Fly and so many people on this call. So thank you for giving us insight into that. So now that we understand who's a part of this program, why it's advantageous, can you give us really the key steps in launching this program at our different organizations?
Well, as you can imagine, it's a pretty complex process, and but it's also an opportunity. It's a really unusual opportunity, if you think about it, to be able to create a brand new onboarding program from scratch that is building a pipeline from a brand new pool of candidates. So that alone makes the role of the person who maybe is presenting this to leadership or ends up as a program manager as someone who is not only in a position where they're impacting people's lives, they're helping people relaunch their careers, but also there are managers who are managing relaunchers for the first time and recruiters who are recruiting them for the first time. So all of that is happening, but you're also, for you as the program manager, or at least the initial leader, you have a high visibility and usually from the top of the organization kind of experience. So high impact, high visibility, and a professional development experience for you yourself as the person who might be introducing or leading this program.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for walking us through that. Oh, go ahead.
I just realized that I only answered the first part of the question, so let me go on. All right, so in terms of key decisions and actions, as I mentioned, it's a complex process, but let's say that you presented this, there's buy-in. One of the first steps that you're going to want to take is to identify, is there an executive champion? Is there someone who is particularly passionate about this, who is going to be by your side and clearing the way and helping you over obstacles? And sometimes the executive champion is even the person who says, I'm going to pilot this concept in my own division or line of business. And so identifying that person, and sometimes there's more than one, is really important. You also then have to think about, what is the philosophy of your program? Why are you running this program? Is it a diversity initiative? Is it because you now understand that this is a high caliber population and you want it to become a part of your broader talent acquisition strategy? Maybe it's changing over time, but really understand your goals and the philosophy for which you approach the program, because then there are decisions to be made in terms of what type of program it is. The programs that involve an internship-like experience have had a lot of attention, and that's been the predominant model of return to work programs, are those that involve some kind of an internship-like experience, but tweaked for the mid-career professional. But they last for anywhere from 8 weeks to 1 year, actually, but most of them are in the 12 to 16 week range. And then after that time, there's a decision made about whether the person is, quote, converting to an employee status. And even deciding what kind of returnship program is going to be, involves a lot of important decision making. We've seen this returnship concept, and because I'll just give you a little history, iRelaunch is the pioneering company in the career reentry space. We were active in it even before we were officially a company in 2007. So we've really been involved not only in shaping the space, but seeing and participating in the trends for almost 20 years now. So the evolution of the returnship was, it used to be more project-based and more similar to a student internship where you're dropped into a team, for a certain period of time, you have this professional development experience. Maybe you convert, maybe you don't. And over time, and we have many more programs now, it's evolved into what we call an intent to hire returnship. And I go into some detail about this and more detail about this and what I'm talking about right now in an article I wrote for Harvard Business Review that came out last August, which is called Return to Work Programs Come of Age. And it's really an overview of the evolution of these programs and talking about the innovations and best practices. So I want to refer that for you all to that resource. And I'm guessing that it's in the chat right now. So anyway, the intent to hire program philosophy means that people are brought into the organization, and remember, these are mid-career professionals who've already had work experience before their career breaks, which could be 1 to over 20 years. And so they're brought into the organization, recruited and integrated into their work teams with the expectation that they are going to convert as opposed to the possibility. And you can only imagine the difference in the experience of someone and their teams and their manager in terms of how are we going to welcome this person into the organization and really make them part of our team because we're expecting them to continue, and how that's a very different experience than they might be if they were looked at as a contractor, or someone who's sort of dropped in there as a temporary role. So that's really been a key point in terms of the evolution, and also I think over time improve the quality of the experience and improve the conversion rates. So this is a model that has been around now for 14 years, the returnship model, and the conversion rates are now averaging over 80%. So that means over 80% of the people who go through these programs end up getting hired when the program completes. So very successful model, but we're also seeing other models now. And part of them are really a byproduct of the success of the returnship model, in that sometimes employers start with a returnship, and if they are having very high conversion rates over time, and if they have enough managers who have that experience, they may convert to something called direct hire, which means that people are hired as employees from day one. And that's because they think, why do we have an internship if so many of the people who are in our program are converting anyway? And there's some easier tracking, and you don't have to change the classification of the person, and some other kind of behind the scenes but complex decisions that have to be made if people are returnship first and then employee. And then we're seeing other programs that go right out of the gate as direct hire programs, and that is in part because they see around them the success of and high conversion rates in other organizations. And it's the returnship, and I wrote about this in my original article for HBR called The 40-Year-Old Intern. The original approach and why returnships were set up in the first place was that it was perceived as risky to hire people who are coming off of a career break. This was way back in 2008 to 2013 when these programs were first starting in this format. And the idea was we can hedge a little bit against that risk if we set it up in a way that we're not 100% committed to hiring the person, but there's kind of this testing out period. And that the testing out period is potentially a two-way street. The employer is evaluating, but also the potential employee is evaluating too about the match. So that's really how it started. And over time, I think the perception is that it's a lot less risky than people originally thought. So there's that decision. And then I guess the other decision, and I'll stop after this because I'm talking a lot, but there's so much to discuss. The other decision has to do with, do people come in cohorts, groups at a time, or do they come in one at a time, during the calendar year? And the original models were very strongly cohort-based originally. People come in as a cohort. Another article for you, even wrote an article for HBR on the power of the cohort in career reentry programming. And that's because, as you can imagine, when you're relaunching your career, and I'm a relauncher myself, I have a finance background, and I went back to a financial analysis role after an 11-year career break. So I understand this. I understand this firsthand. But anyway, when you're coming back in, and of course I came in before there was a program. You're going through a personal and professional transition, and it's very significant, especially the longer you've been out. So if you can go through this transitional programming, the support that is provided by these return to work programs with a group of people going through the same thing, the bonds that are formed in these cohorts are really strong. And we've been in this space so long that we know people who were in the original cohorts, and they will say, we still meet. And so you can imagine the strength of the bonds. And they also, the people in the cohort provide not only sounding boards, but encouragement for everyone else. And they can share resources and not worry if they're asking a dumb question, they can ask it to their other members of their cohort. So all sorts of reasons why the cohort was a very efficient and effective vehicle. Efficient, because if you think about the programming piece, you deliver, we do an orientation with the relaunchers, and we meet with them in the middle of the returnship at the end, and we're meeting with the full cohort. Over time, we've seen some variation because you can imagine from your manager's standpoint, your managers might say, you know, I don't want to wait for that cohort to start. I want the person to start earlier. So enough of those conversations were happening that some of the employers either went to a hybrid model where they were still running cohorts at once or twice or more a year, but they were also taking people in one by one on the off cycle. And the challenge there is you're entering more of a relauncher community as opposed to a cohort. So people who graduated from the program, people who are in different stages, and people who are just coming in. And that can be very impactful also, but it's a little different than if you're coming in all together on the same start date. And then the other piece of it is the challenge of programming, and how do you program when people are coming in one by one. So, and we have some solutions to that. I won't get into all that detail right now, but that's a little bit of an overview of some of the main things that you have to talk about and think about. And there are many more, but I know we want to get to other questions.
Thank you so much. I don't think, I know I can speak for myself. I didn't realize how many different models go into this and what communities are formed. And so thank you so much for this in-depth answer and walking us through those models in the workflow. So for those of us on the employer side, we're wanting to build out this program. We've understood the models, those that are coming in, we understand the identities somewhat. So what other resources should we seek to gather before creating these programs internally?
Okay, first, one other resource I'll point you to is one that we have on our iRelaunch.com website. And if you go to iRelaunch.com, there's an employer tab at the top. And if you click on that, we have a section called the business case for an employer return to work program or career reentry program. Sometimes we're using career reentry now to distinguish it from the programs of bringing everyone return to work back from COVID. So I might use those interchangeably. Anyway, so we have this resource, and what we did is we've been this is our life's work, and we're deep into it. And so we put like a business case document together with all the different things that you might want to think about if you're presenting to leadership or you're thinking early stage about this program. And it's our gift to you. And we say, you know, copy and paste, use it however you want, with attribution, without attribution. There are no restrictions on that. But that's a really important resource. And I also think that article that I mentioned at the beginning, the Return to Work Programs Come of Age article, is a really, really good review of a lot that is going on and pretty up to date in return to work programs. So those are resources. But I think one other thing I wanted to mention in terms of why and what is the case for this population, I just want to mention a few other attributes. So, you know, if you think about the population, we already talked about their work experience, their career breaks being for reasons that have nothing to do with their work performance, but this is a population typically in their 40s and 50s, so a little later stage in life. And one of the great things is not only the education and work experience, but that life stage means they work before, they face work deadlines, they work with multi-generational teams and different personalities. That doesn't have to be taught. They know themselves better. I know that I was a very different employee at age 42 when I went back to the investment firm I worked at after an 11-year career break than I was when I was much earlier stage, 29 or 30 years old. And, you know, we find that people are more self-aware, they're more fully formed as humans, and they have a better sense of where they can add value at an employer. And the other piece is, well, a few other pieces. One is that we're really excited about being back at work, especially if we've taken a long career break, to bring work back into our lives. So we have this energy and enthusiasm about being back that is consistently reported on by managers. And the other thing is, and this has developed over time, we now have access to very high quality upskilling and reskilling resources at no cost or at low cost that are available to us pretty much 24/7. So the opportunities that relaunchers have to update their skills, or maybe you're moving into a new area, but typically people who come back in return to work programs are coming back based on prior experience that they had. So you're upskilling or reskilling, and you have easy, I don't want to say easy, but readily available resources in order to do that. So I just wanted to include those reasons that relaunchers tend to be such great hires. And we're not in exploratory mode in terms of, let's just try this or try that, as we absolutely should be when we're early in our careers. And as we recommend to younger people just starting out, they should be in exploratory mode, but relaunchers are in a different stage and they're not in exploratory mode anymore.
Amazing. So as you've been doing this work for over a decade, you've seen folks go into organizations, you've seen them scale up. I know I'll reference your TED Talk here. You talk about where, someone started as a relauncher and then, went up in the company and was, in a management role. And so you've seen what success looks like. So what industries or sectors would you say have the greatest ROI when it comes to these relaunchers and relauncher programs?
Mm-hmm. So let me just talk first about the waves of career reentry programming, because it does answer your question. So Wall Street was really the trendsetter. Wall Street firms, and we say because they were so old, so many generations after generations of people had come to work there and moved up, and they were finding over and over that women were leaving whenever there were promotions. And suddenly there became a sense of urgency around, we don't have enough women in mid to senior level roles. So those were the original programs where they thought, why don't we try to meet, this was mostly women who took career breaks for caregiving at the time, it's much broader now, but why don't we try to meet people on the other side of that career break and see if we can bring them back in, get them back up to speed. So they're in these mid-career roles, but they're poised and ready to move up into more senior roles. So that was the original reason for these programs. And Goldman was first and JP Morgan was second, and then MetLife and Credit Suisse and Morgan Stanley were third. And if you look now, you see most of the Wall Street firms, commercial banks, rating agencies, financial services, many programs in that sector. Now, given that, they're not all finance roles. There are sometimes a range of functions, not sometimes, most of the time, a range of functions within these programs. And I encourage people to read the fine print and don't just assume that you're looking at Morgan Stanley's program, that they're only finance roles. There are a lot of different kinds of roles. So that was the first wave that really drove career reentry programming. And I still remember fall of 2014, we were having our iRelaunch Return to Work conference, and up on stage for the first time were 5 relaunchers who had relaunched their careers through one of those programs, Goldman, MetLife, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Credit Suisse, up on stage. And that's when the light bulb went off in my head that we have to take this to another sector. So we had done work with the Society of Women Engineers, and together we decided to create the STEM Reentry Task Force, which was really focused on companies that wanted to create programs, initially at least, for people who were relaunching in technical roles. So that launched really the summer of 2015. And we're now in our 7th year, and we've had 36 companies participate, huge global leaders. 27 have launched programs. We've had over 850 people in task force company created programs, and over 85% of them have been hired. So really successful, more high volume model. Legacy tech companies, Silicon Valley companies that are fueled by tech, aerospace and defense, automotive, industrial equipment. We're seeing some pharma consumer goods companies now too. So that was kind of the second wave. And now what we're seeing in real time as we're here, sitting right here, is we're starting to see more public sector programs. So for example, the state of Utah just launched the first state return to work program. And it's so fabulous because the lieutenant governor of Utah is a relauncher. She has 5 children. She took a 13-year career break. She's the lieutenant governor of Utah. This program was her idea. And we actually worked really closely with the state of Utah on that first state return to work program. NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the Boston Federal Reserve Bank of Boston are members of our STEM Reentry Task Force. So we have these federally funded research and development centers. And we have also seen at employer-only events that we run, representatives at the local, state, and federal level looking to think about programs. So that's going to be the next wave. But I also want to say to people that even though we're talking about finance or tech or public sector, again, a range of functions are represented by these programs.
Yeah, I do have to give a big shout out. As a native Utahn, I can definitely say I've heard a lot about this program and we're super excited, and our lieutenant governor is one of those. So it's amazing. You're seeing a lot of impacts from this for sure.
Yeah, Angel, I mean, I'm so happy to hear that you are a Utahn, because not only is the lieutenant governor the head of commerce, Margaret Bussey took a 12-year career break. The chief of staff to the lieutenant governor took an 18-year career break. And the person who now runs the Return Utah program was in their first cohort. Her name is Shay Baker, and she took an 8-year career break, and she's doing a fabulous job. So very unusual to have so many senior people in an organization that have had the direct experience.
Yeah, it's awesome. We love it. Shout out to Utah. Okay, so we're talking about, state organizations where you listed a lot of real powerhouses in the finance industry. Like you mentioned NASA, these are large companies. So those of us that are on the call that are from some smaller companies, middle market, small business, like what do we need to tailor with a smaller workforce?
Yeah, okay, great question. And, if you look at the statistics, almost 40% of the Fortune 50 have these programs, less than 10% of the Fortune 500 have them. So definitely, at least the activity we're seeing right now in US-based public companies, of course, that doesn't include Utah, it doesn't include private companies, it doesn't include companies that have a headquarters internationally, but there's a skewing toward the companies that are doing the most hiring, and that might make sense. And those programs are running longer and they're scaling faster. And actually, just one really awesome aside that just gives me chills every time is that we just had Cedric Layton, who is the global head of JP Morgan's Reentry program, speak. And you can go on our 321 iRelaunch podcast, which you can access through our website. And it might have even been last week. He talks about the Reentry program. So it's one of the older programs, started in 2013. So they are now at the stage where people who are in the earliest cohorts have been there long enough and have been moving up that they are now managers of new relaunchers that are coming into the organization. And that when Vivian Rabin and I wrote Back on the Career Track, which is the book that we wrote together before we co-founded iRelaunch, we had a chapter at the end, like, what does the future look like? And that was the dream. So anyway, it's happening now. It's really exciting. I'm sorry, I got distracted by that. What was the question?
You're good. And I want to speak to that and lean into that, because I feel like there's a lot of talk in DEI about your manager understanding your experience and how you get a sense of belonging from people who have similar experiences to you. And so to hear that is so inspiring, and it's so rare. And so I can definitely understand the emotion that's behind that. So it was really about how do we tailor this program to fit in
smaller companies. Okay. Yeah. Well, let me give you an example. My own company, iRelaunch. So we have almost 20 people who work at iRelaunch. And as you can imagine, we have a lot of relaunchers in our company. And we used to call our return to work program an executive in residence. We just like that term. Sometimes the programs call the participants fellows, or they call them returners or relaunchers, or sometimes it has something to do with like J&J's programs called Reignite, they call them reigniters. So anyway, the idea that there's an executive in residence is a role that has a start and stop to it, but it's a role that's engaged in the organization. And you can bring someone in, one person or two people, and assign them a buddy, and have some structure around not just how you normally would do onboarding. And as a small organization, we don't have elaborate onboarding ourselves. We're kind of developing that right now. So there's general onboarding, and then maybe something specific to the relaunchers. if there are other relaunchers in the organization, really great to pair them up because there's a process that we see, like sort of a continuum that we see relaunchers go through where, and this is known as the learning curve. And I want to call out Michelle Friedman, who's an organizational strategist, who's the one who first talked to us about this, that, you go through these 4 stages of learning. And the second stage is when you find out everything you don't know and you can have a little dip in your learning curve. And that we see relaunchers go through that process. And what happens is when they're past that, then they know and they look back and there's like, now I can see I was just moving along the learning curve. So, those of us who've taken long career breaks, we walk into our first job back still carrying some of that baggage from when we were on a career break and feeling a diminished sense of self. And that can occur, of course, it varies widely depending on why you take a career break. My career break was for childcare reasons. You go to enough social events where you run into someone and they ask you what you're doing and you say you're home and they're already like looking for the next person to talk to, and you feel professionally disconnected. At the same time, you can experience this diminished sense of self. And we recommend people get in touch with people with whom they worked or went to school with from the past, because those people have the frozen in time view of you and they don't even know about your diminished sense of self. So you have to, you're coming in, you need to build back up your confidence in addition to the upskilling and reskilling. You have to get up enough nerve and confidence to feel like it's okay to ask a question, knowing that the answer might be something obvious to everyone else and not feel bad about that. You have to understand, and employers, no matter how big or small, can convey, we want your viewpoint. That's why we're bringing you in. You have a different perspective. You are helping us. And so don't stifle yourself, try to, even though it might be hard, put it out there. And I guess I should say, so I have to stay on topic here. Okay, so small companies can really mimic what a big company program is, but bring people in one at a time. And you're not going to have like elaborate programming. You're going to be doing things a little bit more casually, but you can still provide that support to people and just the recognition and understanding that there's going to be an on-ramp period, and to really wait it out with them, because we see, after 3 months or so, people all of a sudden make a big leap. And so they might have been struggling into that time, and then all of a sudden things fall into place. So you have to have that mindset as a manager, and the team, your team needs to have that mindset too. But then the rewards are, that relaunchers bring to their teams and their companies have really. It's the reason these programs are going longer and that they're scaling at rates we've never seen before is because the relaunchers in the organizations are so successful. And I guess one other piece is, once you have a critical mass of relaunchers inside your organization, not only do you have that phenomenon we were talking about before, where you have relaunchers, new relaunchers working for those who have already been there a while, but there starts to be a more acceptance. There are many more success stories. Managers see, even the skeptical ones see success story after success story. One of the best things that happens when you first announce that you are building a return to work program or a career reentry program inside your company, you usually hear from 2 people. You hear from managers who are really excited to be part of it because some personal connection they have, they're relative or friend is on career break or went back or is thinking about it. And you also have the people who relaunched their career before you had a program. They've been back in the organization for a few years. Most people don't even know that they took a career break. So when they come out of the woodwork, it's very powerful, because sometimes the managers, especially if they're skeptical, would be like, I had no idea so-and-so took a career break. And then as longer the program runs and the more success stories you have, the more managers that have the experience on managing a relauncher, then the recognition of the caliber goes much more broad. So anyway, sorry, I ended up on a different topic, but for small companies, you can do, you can follow very much the same playbook, but the programming piece is going to be much less structured.
Amazing. No, don't apologize. That was amazing. That is a great transition into my next question. So I love the community model. It's really like There's folks that have been relaunchers, whether like in an official capacity or those that did it themselves. But when we look at like org structure, how do you suggest organizations manage this so it's sustainable, and who does it really fall on? And can you give us some pointers there?
Yeah, so this is, I'm just making myself some notes so I don't forget to say certain things. Okay, so this is a really important topic, and it's becoming more of a hot topic as programs are getting bigger and they're scaling and they're across geographic, some of them are worldwide, and across different business units. So there's a lot of discussion about how do you manage these programs with less like manual, sort of outside your normal system features. So some of the biggest programs will still say that they have a manual component. Especially, it's a little different if people come in as employees from day one. If they come in as returnships, we're still, most of the programs are returnship based. Then you have the discussion about, well, what's the classification of that person before they then convert to an employee? What is the level and compensation? Like, do we even know? Do we have them come in a generic role category, and then we kind of see how things go, and then, then we figure out the level? Some employers do that. More and more, we're seeing employers, and this is really important, attach an open headcount role to each returnship. Because what was happening, that's along with the intent to hire philosophy, because what we did have happen were like really high qualified, excellent people go through the returnship, and there was not a job attached to it, but there was hiring anticipated in the area where they were working, and maybe it didn't materialize. And then some of those people didn't get placed, and they were great. So we've seen now a shift to identifying open headcount. You have to ask managers to identify and attach some of their open headcount to the program, where only relaunchers are applying to the program. Then you're actually having them come in within a certain band of levels and a band of comp. Now, by the end of the returnship, there is usually another conversation. And we have heard relaunchers say, I felt more powerful in the negotiation after I had not only proved to the employer, but I proved to myself that I can do that. So, and most employers want the relauncher to feel comfortable and powerful in the negotiation. But the thing that's interesting is, these programs originally were viewed as sort of a mid-career version of a university student internship program. And over time, it's still good to use that as a reference point for people who don't know what it is, because it's so easy to sort of think, oh, I kind of get it when I hear about that. But they're also, more and more companies are identifying them as leadership development programs, kind of a combination, because you're bringing people in who you want to be poised and ready to move up in the organization. So that then begs the question about, well, at the end of the returnship, if we're are we juggling between, should they be in this level 7 or level 6? So let's just say, and sometimes the relauncher will think, well, I'm coming off a long career break. I better sort of hedge my bets, and maybe I'd rather come in at the more junior level. And then the employer's thinking, well, we want to set the person up for success, and so let's bring them at the more junior level, they can move up. And then the relauncher progresses at a much faster rate than anyone predicted, than they predicted or the employer. So then the question comes, do you do some like an off-cycle level adjustment? And are you allowed to do that because it's a leadership development program and people in those programs get certain privileges or there's certain features? Or is there a rule where, nope, we don't do that. We don't do off-cycle raises and promotions. We have to wait until the end of the year or whatever. So, but I just want, there's actually a couple of articles I wrote for HBR about level and compensation. And one of them is why people sometimes take a lower level job than when they left, especially if they had a long career break. Sometimes they just want a less stressful job. They're thinking, you know what? I can do this job really well and manage my life outside of work and have less stress. And that works for me. And sometimes people will say, I've been out for a really long time and I want to get my feet wet again before I move up. Then outside of career reentry programs, there are sometimes people say, I was on the wrong career path to begin with, and I want to really relaunch in a brand new direction, and maybe I have to come in more at entry level. So there's all these different approaches on the relauncher side to this. But it's more and more of a conversation, and it's a very hot topic in career reentry programming. And I guess one of the things I'll tell this audience is every year we run the iRelaunch Employer Summit. And it's a closed private meeting, and it's only for employers. It's not a recruiting event. It's an event to exchange knowledge about innovations and best practices. And we pick the topics and the people who speak very carefully because we know we learned what people really want to hear about. And so, we'll talk about program manager succession, like when a new program manager takes over from an old one, because we know that if there's not a good handoff, or if the person who's passionate leaves the organization or moves into another role, sometimes the program can die or it can get dormant for a while. So anyway, so I wanted people to be aware of that. We actually just had it in April. But the other thing is that we have a private unlisted LinkedIn group called the iRelaunch Employer Community. And you can get in touch with us if you want. You have to be an employer in order to be in it. You have to be an employer in order to go to the summit. We actually vet everyone who goes. And then we'll invite you in, and then you can have an opportunity to be in contact with other employers that way. Did I answer the question? Okay.
You did. Love it. I love it. So for those that are really like selling this business case internally, trying to get folks on board to get this, to launch the Reentry relauncher program, what is like the minimum viable product that we can really like pitch and be able to scale upwards? Because I know it's as you said, there's a bias there that it's high risk, and so how do we start with a smaller package and scale it up?
Yeah, great question. And even the biggest companies in the world that we've worked with have started with 6 people or 10 people, or much smaller cohorts than you might imagine. And it's because if you're testing it out, you're testing the waters. It's good to run a pilot, because it's the pilot. The whole reason for the pilot is to tweak it and learn from it. So the idea is, let's set it up for success based on everything we know, which is a lot now. But also, let's be open to what worked and what didn't work, and maybe something that worked in some other organization was just like really messy here. And so start small. So that's one of them. Start small, have a pilot, but also, as soon as you announce that this program is happening, and it's a big company, we typically hear that all of a sudden, India and Japan and Europe, all these other geographic areas, leaders come in and say, wait, can we be in it? Can we be in it? And then other lines of business will also want to. So sometimes you have to have a little bit of control first and say, we're just going to run it first, and then we're going to work on expanding it. And then the other thing is to be somewhat flexible, because it could be, first of all, there are certain countries, we run our programs all over the world. We just had our first Egyptian relauncher. That was like really exciting, literally all over the world. And so there are some countries where you're not allowed to have an internship-like experience for someone unless they're in a university. Or sometimes you have to hire people. I think in Canada, you have to hire people as employees, but they have this probationary period at the beginning that they're kind of using as a proxy, for the returnship. And some of them allow it, but it has to be 6 months long. So there are going to be some variations depending on the country. And so you'll have to have some flexibility there. But one of the key best practices is, first of all, establish a landing page that has all of the information about the program in one place. And when you're managing the program, whether it's whatever country or certain lines of business, everyone has to run their program through access through that one portal. And we have some great examples of programs that are global now, and you can see how they announce. Like if you look at Morgan Stanley's Return to Work landing page, they do a really nice job of showing the pictures of, I think, 6 or 7 different countries that they run it in. If you look at Oracle Career Relaunch, that's a direct hire program that actually we work with them on this direct hire. They start as a cohort. They have 12 weeks of programming altogether, even though they were employees from day one. So if you look at that landing page, Oracle Career Relaunch, you'll see that they have US, Brazil, I can't, Mexico, India, I can't remember the exact countries, but you'll see little squares for each one in the same landing page. So it is important to have some standardization or some unifying place. Otherwise, and we've seen this happen, and that sometimes there are parallel programs that are running within these large organizations in different places, and they're different and lengths, and different people are managing them, different philosophy. And we've sometimes seen a pattern where that might go on for a while, and then all of a sudden someone decides, we're going to bring these all under one umbrella. And then there are others where they, right from the get-go, they're like, we're going to control this enterprise-wide, and people are going to have to go through us. So it kind of depends on the company. Oh, wait.
Sorry.
You're on mute.
My mic was on. So that's super helpful, because, you know, when we talk about org structure, understanding that, like, having that uniformity in what the program looks like is helpful for, like, internally to eliminate confusion, but also it helps the experience of the relaunchers to all, you know, be getting the same information and having the same experience.
Yeah, let me make one comment on that. So one of the issues is classification, and because so I have an article in HBR about normalization of career breaks, and there are 3 stages. And like the first one is career breaks used to be a reason to throw out the resume. Now you have to have it to be eligible to apply for and participate in the program. So complete reframing of the career break. Number 2, LinkedIn just came out with this new feature. You can see in back of me, we have call out your break. This is a campaign that we're running, and our head of marketing, Shannon Amsbacher, is on the line here, and she was really responsible for developing this whole campaign. So hashtag call out your break. It's to use this new feature on LinkedIn that's called career break. To actually call your career break out, there's 13 different reasons why. You can describe it, because you want to be visible to all the employers that have these programs now. You want to shout out, I'm eligible for your program. So, but the thing is, when you come into these programs, the 3rd stage is going to be when the applicant tracking systems and the employee tracking systems are going to have it baked into their drop-down menus, a category for career reentry. Because right now it has to fit into intern or contract or something that's not right. And sometimes if the intern classification is used, it kind of shows up on, you know, their signature or something when people click on them internally. And people feel that we're really different from an entry-level intern. So I think I have a section in that August HBR article saying, like, get rid of the word intern as much as possible, because this is really a different group. So, okay, sorry, just want to make that one extra comment about systems and classification, but back to you, Angel.
Love it, thank you. So you spoke about this, and I think this might be our last question. Those that have taken a career break are emerging into a very different work environment than pre-pandemic, right? And
Yeah.
we talk about, you know, accessing global talent now, whereas before it used to be really localized. So can you speak to those nuances that post-pandemic relaunchers might be experiencing, and how they can really manage those different environments?
I think it's actually, you know, one of the, as tragic as COVID was, it was actually helpful to people who were taking career breaks, because so many of us took career breaks during COVID. Over 4 million men and women at the height of COVID had withdrawn from the labor force. They're not counted in the unemployed. I think at the height, it was 2.3 million women, 1.8 million men. It was named a she session, but the men were hit pretty hard too. And so career breaks just became much more common. And I think some of the stigma fell away from taking a career break because of what happened during COVID. The other thing that happened, and this even impacts people who didn't take career breaks, but very important for those of us who are on career break, is the FaceTime in the office requirements, like poof, went away overnight. You know, everything went virtual, and now things are coming back in different ways and they're hybrid, but we've always heard relaunchers say, I could actually work the equivalent of a full-time job, but where and how and when the work got done precludes me from being in the workforce because so many employers want that face time in the office. Well, now that there is less standardization around that, that's actually a better thing. More relaunchers can come back in under those circumstances. And then the other thing that we found, and this was also something that we saw worldwide, which was super fascinating because relaunchers all over the world, we found in this direct experience with them, same issues, same things they were excited about, same things they were concerned about, same timelines of progress, and it was really remarkable. So anyway, we did find that the people, wherever they were in the world, who took the career breaks for childcare reasons, who still had children at home, found that the virtual relaunch was gentler than the relaunch. Like when I went back to work, I'm like up and out of the house. It was a completely different experience for everyone in the family. It completely changed our routine. But now mom or dad might be back at work. Maybe you're not supposed to go in their office or you have to be quiet, but they're kind of around. And that's a little different than, and there's a little bit of flexibility during the day. Then maybe step 2 is going to be they're going to go into the office. So those are some things that can impact the relauncher. We saw the programs go very seamlessly to virtual models. And we've seen programs get launched during COVID, expand during COVID. This is a period of time where we've never seen so much activity and growth in the career reentry space. So COVID has done nothing to restrict that. And if anything, it's enabled it.
Thank you. That's good news to hear. We have a lot of folks on in our chat that are relaunchers themselves, and so I'm happy that we can give them a positive insight to what the workforce will look like for them in a virtual world or in a virtual model. So we actually have one question, and this will be my last one, I promise, but this is super important. So do you see any government grants supporting these programs, and can you name out a few?
Well, I have not seen any government grants. There are workforce development grants now that states are getting that are newer, that we're seeing some conversations about, could they have a role in these programs? There are some like specific state by state, certain types of grant, like quasi public private, certain kinds of grant programs are there within the Economic Development Commission, but we haven't seen anything standardized where actually on the relauncher side, the AAUW, American Association of University Women, actually, if it's women who are relaunching, they do give scholarships for people who have updating their skills, even if they're mid-career. But for the programs themselves, it could be that there are other people who know a lot more about this, but we haven't seen a lot of activity there yet.
Thank you. So I want to open it up to, is there anything within the relauncher space that we haven't asked you about that you want to share? Or if you want to plug, how folks can connect with you and get into your community and get into the work.
All right. Well, thank you for that opportunity, Angel, and thank you for the great questions and the conversation. So employers and individuals, iRelaunch.com, you'll see tabs for individuals and for employers. For individuals, we have our 31st iRelaunch Return to Work conference coming up in May. We run the largest and longest running career reentry event in the country. We'll probably have 1,500 relaunchers there. It's a virtual conference. We have 17 at least leading global sponsors led by Meta this time for this conference that are there specifically to recruit relaunchers for their career reentry programs and jobs. So that's why they're there. That's why they're on our job board on iRelaunch.com. And we run that conference in May and we'll run it again in October. So get on our job board, get on our mailing list, and every Friday you'll get notified about return to work programs and jobs. And I would encourage the employers to do that too. And then employers, certainly we have a mailing list for employers, and we have our general mailing list, and we have our LinkedIn group. So encourage you to take advantage of those resources and opportunities to interact with us, and feel free to reach out to us. We'll have an introductory conversation with you just like this, but to give you more detailed information. thanks for the opportunity, Angela, to talk about that.
Yes, thank you so much, Carol. We're wrapping up, and we just want to say thank you for sharing this insightful conversation with us, with our viewers. Thank you to those that interacted with us in the chat. Thanks for coming and spending some time with Power to Fly, and thanks, Carol. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks.